Hey everyone, Julian here, and today I'm going to be teaching you how to make lo-fi house pads using just Ableton stuff. I've gotten a few requests for this tutorial because I've done a lo-fi house synth tutorial and a ton of different other lo-fi house tutorials, but I've never done one just dedicated to pads, so figured what better time than now. And as always, you can get the project file and preset and MIDI from this in the description on my Bandcamp for just $5. So if you want to really dive in and reverse engineer this, or maybe just sort of have this sound just to use in future projects, that's a great way to do it, and it's a great way to support the channel and help me out, so I'd really appreciate if you could check that out. Anyway, here's the video. So I have this sound, you heard it in the intro, it's just this pad that I made. And so yeah, I made this using only Operator and then just a bunch of Ableton native stuff. But I'll first talk about the chords real quick, because the chords are kind of important for this style. So with lo-fi house, it's about a lot of those kind of like 90s jazzy sort of house chords. Like in this case, I have a minor ninth chord, which is a very jazzy house kind of chord. And then it goes into this more dissonant sort of weird sounding chord. But this has that jazzy feel again, because you have this like big, nice, lush minor ninth chord. And then this one, which isn't quite as lush, but still has that nice feel to it. And yeah, I think that's just very important stylistically to like getting this kind of sound, is the kind of chords that you're playing. So it's important to do stuff like this. So I recommend playing around with like minor ninth chords, minor seventh chords, major 7th chords, major 9th chords, major 11th chords, like all those kind of things. If you literally just look up jazzy chords on the internet, you will find plenty of articles where you can learn all about this kind of stuff. But yeah, as far as the sound goes, it's pretty simple actually. It's really not a whole lot of stuff, and there's not a whole lot of stuff that you need to do to get this kind of sound, but there's a few kind of key elements and a few key steps that I want to highlight with this. So basically what this sound is it's a saw wave, and then some white noise and Operator. I have Operator set to the algorithm where it's not FM, so it's just like, these are just playing sort of in parallel with each other, and they're not doing any frequency modulation or anything like that. It's basically just a regular subtractive synth this way. But after that, I have it going through the filter, and the filter has an envelope on it, which is set like this. So I'll turn all of this stuff off real quick, and you can see what this filter envelope is doing. I'll turn this up again. Whoops. So you hear it's like wow, wow, like that. That's the filter opening up. That's because I have this envelope up here, and then I have it shaped like this. So there's like this quick attack, and then it goes down over the decay for a little bit of a longer amount of time. This is just a low pass filter, 24 dB per octave of attenuation. I had the resonance up a little bit because I like that kind of juicy like resonant sound. But if you go too hard, it gets kind of too much, especially with that white noise, so I just kind of dialed it back a little bit. And the only other thing I have inside of Operator here is I have this LFO, which actually by default comes mapped to or routed to the pitches of all 4 oscillators. So what I did was I just kept that on, and then usually by default it's set like this, which is way too high. But if you set it really low, like 4 or 5 or 6% or even 7% sometimes, you get that nice vibrato. If I play it without, you hear it just stays on the one note and it's not like warbling. But when I turn it on, we get that like kind of like warbling effect, and I think it sounds pretty good. I really like it for the style, and this is an important thing. If you do this on like a lot of your sounds, like put vibrato on them, you can do it in any way. You could use like an LFO like this. You could there's a ton of free vibrato plugins that you can get. I mean, there's just a ton of ways to do the sound, and it's a really important thing for the style, I think, because it gives it the old kind of lo-fi sound. And this is definitely one of those things that I said is like very characteristic of a lo-fi house that I wanted to talk about in this video. So that's really it inside of Operator. I didn't even touch the rate on the LFO. I just kept that default, I believe. Oh, I turned it down. Okay, I turned it down from 64 to 62. But yeah, so like even that, I didn't really have to mess with too much. So after Operator, I have this bit crusher, and it's the Redux, and it's set to the soft mode for the downsample. I don't have bit reduction on. But what the soft mode does is it just gives you like a little bit of a softer kind of feel, because if you just have it on the hard mode, it gets kind of extreme very quickly. So I like to use a soft mode because you can kind of play around with those lower ranges of the sweep there and just get a little bit more detailed and clear sound. So that's just kind of giving it more of like, again, like the old lo-fi kind of sound. And this is a great technique as well. Like anytime you're making any lo-fi house type of sound, I'd recommend putting some bit reduction on it or some bit crushing on it. Because it gives it that old kind of sampler feel. And again, just keeps with the sort of lo-fi vibe. After that, I have, you guessed it, a bit warmer. If you don't know what a bit warmer is, I talk about it a lot on this channel. It's a very nice preset for Ableton's Saturator, which comes by default with Ableton, with all versions of Ableton. So if you just go under Saturator, it's the first preset there. And yeah, I just put it on here after this stuff. Because as you can hear, it's just really beefing the sound up a lot. And as you would imagine, making it a bit warmer. I'm going to turn that down now. But yeah, I really like adding a little bit of subtle distortion / saturation over top of everything like this because it just gives it that extra little bit of crunch that really brings it to life. It makes it lo-fi, I feel like. So after that, I have this reverb here. Just to give it some space. This is pretty much just the default reverb setting. I turned the size down a bit. I messed with the decay time, and I turned the dry wet down a bit, so it wasn't as like in your face, but it was still like a pretty long reverb. And again, this is just giving it space. The key here is not to give it too much reverb. A lot of times when people think of pads, they think of like very, very like reverbed out sounds, which in this style of music at least, I don't think that's necessarily always the best kind of sound. I really like using these kind of more laid back reverbs that aren't just so in your face for this stuff because it's very tight and rhythmic and percussive. So like having sounds that are just so like washed out and spacey in the background, sometimes those kind of sounds can have their place, but for the most part, they kind of just get lost in the mix and take away from the overall vibe of what you want from lo-fi house. So again, using these tighter reverbs, you can still give it space, but without all that kind of extra baggage that you get with like a super long reverb. So the next thing I have after that is this clip slap analog preset for Ableton's Echo. So this is a preset as well. It sounds like this on here. So it's just giving it that quick little echo, but I did a few little things. So this clip slap analog is a preset for Ableton's Echo. If you go under vintage delay, it's right here, but there's a few problems with it by default. For one, there's this noise on here, which you may or may not be able to hear. It's playing right now. It constantly plays in the background. And if you look at the VU meter here for this track, you'll see it there. So I always turn that off because it's supposed to kind of emulate like analog tape echoes and like the noises they would have. But because usually when I'm making lo-fi house, I just have a sort of like cassette noise or vinyl noise or something like that playing in the track anyway, I usually just turn this off because it just makes it kind of messy. It is a cool feature though. Like it definitely has its place, but for this sound, I just didn't really want it. And then after that, another problem here with the default sound is that it's very loud and distorted. And the reason for this is because this input knob is turned up a bunch. So all you have to do is click on that and hit backspace. And now we're back to normal volume, and we still got that cool little slap delay. So once you do those two things, there's really not too much else you really need to do with this preset. I use it a ton. I usually just kind of play around with these two delay times. And, you know, just give it like different kind of feels, I guess. And sometimes I'll turn on the dry wet a little bit. So, I mean, you can just kind of play around with those. But this is a great preset, but you got to, again, you got to play around with that noise and then the input to get it sounding kind of normal. So after that, I just have one more thing. I have this limiter, and this is where I'm going to have to turn this back down, I think. Because basically what the limiter is doing is it's kind of just going at the end of the chain and taking all the stuff that's happening, all the saturation, and then the reverb and the echo, and just really like pushing it. I used a preset. I'll show you. It is under limiter. It's just called push. But I turned it up a bit because by default the gain is set to 4.5 dB, and I turned it up to like 8.5, I believe, something like that. And what this is just doing is it's basically just taking all this reverb and this echo here and just like really squashing it and pulling all those little quiet echoes and reverbs that you don't hear, or reverb tails that you don't hear as loud normally, and just pulling them up to be as loud as everything else. And it's also like working with the sound in general as well, because like this sound is in some ways in some ways it kind of has some dynamics. For the most part, it's a pretty flat sound, but what little dynamics it had are really being squashed, and it's just being turned into this like big mash of this sound, I guess. But I really like doing this for lo-fi house. I think it sounds really cool. Some people say, it's not good to do stuff this way, but for the most part, I've had a pretty good experience with it. And like with lo-fi house, it really, honestly, it's kind of just about like having fun and not like doing things by any kind of specific set standard. Like it's really just what sounds good is good. And in my opinion, this sounds good. So I think it's fine to do stuff like this with this limiter. And really, like, lo-fi house is also, like, very over-compressed to begin with. Like, there's a lot of, you can hear a lot of compression on the songs. You hear a lot of limiting. Like, it's just a very, like, powerful kind of, like, boomy style like that. Like, this is what people do to their sounds in the style. And this is something you can do to give your sounds a little bit more of that kind of shine. So that's going to be it for today, guys. Like I said, main things here are just sort of doing that little vibrato and then playing around with the distortion and the bit crushing to give it the lo-fi feel. And then if you get the tight reverb and the tight little echo with a bit of compression or limiting on the end, you can really get that nice, just deep lo-fi sound. So that's going to be it for today, guys. Make sure to let me know what you thought of this video in the comments, and like the video and subscribe. Maybe even share this video if it really helped you out. Once again, you can get the project file and preset and MIDI from this video in the description for just $5 on my Bandcamp. It's a great way to help me out if you want to support the channel. And yeah, so that's going to be it for today, guys. I will see you guys again tomorrow with another video.